Hello, everyone. I'm Gary Gomes. I'm a Vedic astrologer. I've been a Vedic astrologer for roughly 30 years, a bit over 30 years now. And I'm here. This is a TV show that I do for local cable news. It's also a podcast or a YouTube broadcast that I do. So I'm here to talk to you about astrology, in particular Indian astrology or Vedic astrology, and to give you an update on what's happening with the planets and also what to expect over the next few months. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Vedic astrology, I've been doing these videos for a few years, but just to give you a brief overview, this is what's called a South Indian chart. And it's always a good idea to go back to the basics. So we'll call this a basics introduction. So I use what's called a South Indian chart. A North Indian chart looks like this little guy, and down here, a Bengali chart looks a little bit like that's an East Indian chart. It looks a little bit like this guy right here. It's kind of a fascinating looking chart. But I just personally find the South Indian just a little bit more user friendly. I don't, there are certain advantages and disadvantages to using all three charts. But basically, it's really what you're comfortable with. The main thing we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about a topic, and we'll choose a topic to talk about during the recording. And the topic I'd like to talk about is debilitated and exalted planets. And I think one of the things that's important to know about debilitated and exalted is that it essentially means they're in their least favorable and most favorable signs. And one of the reasons I'm talking about this so much is because there's a special issue with Mars right now. And before I go further, please allow me to encourage you to like, subscribe, share the channel, because we're really trying to build a broad base. I'm trying to get away from what I consider to be alarmist astrology and actually get back further to astrology the way it was. I'm passionate about it, but I don't want to terrify people with dire predictions and alarmism. So, for example, we did have a really bad conjunction in December of 2019. Conjunction means a gathering of planets, and that and the eclipse of December 26th and January 20th and January 10th, excuse me, of 2020 did lead to the pandemic. Now, what happens is you'll also have people starting to say, well, this is going to be the beginning of a series of pandemics, and we're in for like 10 years of hell, and this is just going to be a horrible time to live in. And I don't think, just based upon the astrology and what I've seen and experienced in my lifetime, I don't believe this is the case. It'll be challenging, certainly, but not apocalyptic, not war time. Although, just to digress a minute, there was and this is significant. So this digression is significant. They have discovered a new comet. Comets and books like Varaha Mahira's Priyasa and Gita are described as Ketus. What are Ketus? Well, Ketus are, they correspond to the south lunar node, but essentially they have a reaction, and they actually, I liken it to them drawing down energy or bringing attention to themselves. So essentially, K2s are basically flags. They're warnings. So if you do have a new comet, a comet is an unknown object in the sky. So the way K2 is described in Indian mythology or Indian stories is as a headless body. And if you think really carefully, it's sort of an analogy for space. Okay, so we have Rahu is the head. Rahu is connected with the material world and things we want to have and things we desire and things we're frustrated about not having. Ketu is things that come to us surprisingly. So during Ketu subperiods, opportunities will pop up. They'll be either positive or negative, but they'll be very surprising opportunities. And comets are essentially unexpected visitors. I do expect there to be a big event around 2031. And if I can just go ahead to 2031, we can see where the planets are going to be. So we're 2012, and that's when this new comet, which is supposed to be enormous, but we've been through that before with Kohoutek. So Kohoutek was supposed to be a really big deal for those of you who were around in 1974. And it did lead to 1973, and it did lead to the resignation of a leader or the overthrow of a leader. And let's see, the oil crisis. But in terms of the actual size of Kohoutek itself, it was difficult to see. Its effect was hidden, not overt. So we do have a K2 Saturn conjunction in 2031, and we have a Jupiter Rahu conjunction in 2031 as well. Now, this is what's called a Guru Chandala Yoga. So Guru Chandala yogas are fairly common. They're not all that rare in a chart. And it's really essentially whenever Jupiter and Rahu get together. And given the orbits they actually happen more often than you think they would. What usually happens during a Guru Chandala Yoga is you'll see people ignoring wisdom or ignoring principles or ungrateful, or so we could see some kind of a mass rebellion or mass problem happen around that time. And one of the triggers for me was hearing that comet was hitting or was not hitting was coming in 2031. So in 2031, you will see upheavals, financial upheavals, and upheavals to wealth at that time, and maybe even some violent rebellions in several wealthy countries. And if the current trends in politics continue, I wouldn't be surprised if that would happen in a country like the United States or Europe or Brazil, because we have essentially, and this isn't to politicize it, but we're having essentially these growing divisions of wealth. It could be a disease because of the Saturn K2 conjunction, but it doesn't seem to be. It seems to be more of a societal change. And I think, as in Saturn's in Taurus, and K2s with it, there'll be an attack on upper classes, I think, and subversion. So this won't be government inspired. This will be popularly inspired. So I'm going on a limb. This is like a 10-year ahead prediction, and actually, a lot of people will be fairly happy with it. It'll be somewhat similar to, I would say, the early to mid 70s. And so that's the prediction for the future. Now let's get back to, so that's like, I'm putting myself out there 10 years ahead. No international wars for quite some time. Not really until I think around 2039, or even 2040, 41 or 42. I'm not seeing anything like a world war. I don't think we've outgrown the possibility of it, but I think it's unlikely in our lifetime. Anyway, all right. So let's go back here. But prepare to see some economic shifts over the next 10 years or so. And I think the reason for that is because, well, there's a couple of reasons I can name politically, but I won't get into. But we're shifting. We're not doing anything about the core problems in our society, which is really to me not identity so much, but more economic opportunity. And I think that's been building since the 1960s. So you saw maybe minor flaps in the 1960s where there was an effort to change that, but I don't think they ever really took hold. So let's get back to the chart in hand, and also let's talk about our topic of the day, which is debilitation. Okay, so a debilitated planet functions badly when it's in a sign of debilitation. There are exceptions. Okay, so Mars has, but what happens when Mars is debilitated? Well, I've heard some pundits say that people get more spiritual, they get more interested in spiritual life, and that's partially true. But also, people are far quicker to anger. Okay, so their emotions aren't quite as, Mars is connected with logic. Okay, as a planet, it rules a system of thought called logic, in which you win an argument based upon logical deduction. It is considered one of the Vedangas, or the six limbs of the Vedas. And if Mars is weak, then that ability to win through logic gets compromised. So you win through emotion, or you win through what I would call beating people up with words, and maybe even beating people up. This was one reason why I thought this summer was going to be very violent. Now, there is a counterweight to Mars in this chart, and Saturn is aspecting Mars. And you also have Venus with Mars. Venus with Mars is a very passionate combination. Okay, so people will be very passionate about their ideals, passionate about changing the system. And that's where you're seeing a lot of the social justice emphasis come from. It's really from the states of Venus in the chart. But the Venus-Mars combination is making it almost into a cultural war. And it's not just a cultural war here in the United States, it's a cultural war here, worldwide. And these conflicts aren't new. I keep emphasizing that just so folks are aware of this. I heard these arguments back into the 50s, 1960s. They go as far back as the advent of Marxism in Europe. these aren't new arguments. They're reframed in a new context. They're reframed. So it's a social argument, but it's also an economic argument. So there's definitely an economic component to this. But the arguments and the passion, the need for changing structure, Saturn is in Capricorn, but structure is not going to change all that much. And when I say structure, I mean you're not going to see a fundamental economic change in this society. That's not going to happen. The earliest that's going to happen, I would say would probably be about 6 years from now. 6 to 7 years from now. And I think what you're going to see over the summer months is really a lot of people getting angry, especially this month. A lot of people getting very passionate. Venus is controlling things, Saturn's controlling things, and Saturn's retrograde. So that's making people hold tight to their beliefs. There's less of a potential to evolve or to understand. So you're going to see increasing conflict, especially over the next 3 to 4 weeks, about cultural issues. And the other thing that's happening here is you have Rahu, Mercury conjunction. So we're not talking about debilitated, but let's say what happens when Jupiter is debilitated. Well, people start to get pretty non-traditional. So Jupiter is going to be in debilitation from around August to September when it's retrograde, and then September to November when it's direct. So you'll see more ideological shifts or more demands for change, but they won't. And again, I'm not trying to draw the ire of any group. They won't be well reasoned. They won't be framed in such a way that they'll invite people in. They'll be dogmatic. And actually, the next stage for having a meaningful conversation internationally is really going to come around late November. And that's because Jupiter will move back into Aquarius. We'll focus more on health issues, financial issues, but Jupiter will cause the economy to expand at least until mid-August. So that's good news. It'll start getting a little bit stuck around August through November. You'll see bumps where it'll get much better. But around November, you'll start to see it improve again and start to grow again. The other thing is currently, so that's a debilitated Jupiter. Mercury is past its debilitation point. It's with Rahu though. So again, the media is anxious for new topics to disturb or upset us. And they'll fade out within about a week or so. And we'll be focused more on the government and more on the government moving forward and more on the government trying to address issues rather than having the media cause panic. I think when I look at the US chart, although I'm a firm believer in freedom of speech, the media is by far the Achilles heel of this country. And I don't mean freedom of speech is the Achilles heel. I mean the media's need for sensationalism is the Achilles heel of our society. So essentially, they'll try to cause anger, anxiety, discontent, and I think You know, there it's, and again, I have to remind people, it's a business. You know, other things are businesses too. So you go to a restaurant and you expect to get served a good meal, and you have a good meal and you leave. You go to a merchant, you expect to get what you pay for, and it's a meal, and it's a good thing. I'm sorry. And if you're dissatisfied, you can always send it back. Media is a service you can't send back. Um, Media is a service which is really tough to control. So, and I'm not even talking about from a government standpoint, I'm talking about from a consumer standpoint. So the only thing you can do is voice protest, and that protest has been weaponized for um, uh, in order to shut people up, basically. And that's not just true of one side. That's true of both sides of the political spectrum and all sides. So I'm not picking sides here. I'm just saying it's sort of the gosh, I'm just trying to say it. But it's also a strength because in Europe, in China, in Russia, in other countries around the world, the media is better behaved. And you'll have all these countries laughing at the problems in the United States, but they have just as serious problems, but their media won't talk about it. And I think that's one of the things, so it's both a blessing and a curse. So we have a free media, which is commercially driven, extremely commercially driven. Even PBS is commercially driven because they have lost a lot of their government funding, and so you have this kind of a setup where we really don't have we have an image that we have a free press in the United States. It isn't free, you're paying for it. Okay. Every day you're paying for it, either through the products you buy or through the items you consume, you're paying for that media. Okay. So if something isn't getting good ratings, that person or that component goes off the air. So it's really not free. It's a commercialized media. However, in other parts of the world, you get the same kind of sensationalism now, but they'll be very careful to try to control. And this is to try to control things and make them look bad to greater or lesser extents. I'm not saying every country does that. And some countries have reasons for doing it. I'm not saying I accept those reasons. And especially right now, we have Mars and Venus in the US's chart, 8th house, and that'll essentially make the media much more hostile or much more driven than normal. So that element is still there. We don't have a controversial president in right now, or we do, to some people we do, but we do have increasingly, what I would call increasingly bad economic projections, increasing worries about new COVID strains, increasing panics about situations that are developing around the world, and also, of course, cyber attacks. Cyber attack activity should peter out a bit over the next few months, until we're around 6 months from now. Then we'll probably see a serious cyber attack. But basically, and you might see like one or two small ones over the next week, but but it looks to me like there'll be a serious one around November, December. The other thing is we have, and that's because of Mercury with K2. And essentially what we have right now is we have this very, very sketchy kind of a world stage where people are angry, but they really don't know, or they know what they're angry about. I'm not taking that away from them, but they're looking for change, they're looking for gain. The Lord of the 10th is in the first house, but they're afraid the gain won't be permanent, or they're afraid the economy is going to spiral into an inflationary cycle, which is possible, but the reasons that various people give for it are just economically inaccurate. And if the economy starts to get rolling again, around the end of the year, you won't see the kind of inflationary pressure we saw in the 1970s. And that depends a lot on governmental actions, such as increasing access to fuels and increasing, working to lower the unemployment rate, and essentially just putting more supplies in the pipeline. Yeah. And when I say supplies in the pipeline, I'm not just talking about energy, I'm talking about everything. Because that's really what's driving inflation right now. It's not government spending, it's essentially a lack of supplies of products. And because of production shutdowns. So if we can get those things rolling again, then we'll have some good economic news by the end of the year. The other thing I noticed, and again, this is very much a Saturn retrograde phenomenon. I discussed this with Lolita Donatella of Quebec on the show we share together. Chuck Schumer just came out for an extension of the student loan break that people are experiencing. That's very much a Saturn retrograde kind of a phenomenon, because debts are forgiven during Saturn retrograde. Around the fall, you'll see. So he wants to extend it another 6 months, which I actually think is a good idea, personally. But I think the thing of it is there'll be more pressure to collect on debts and more pressure to lift for moratoriums around probably around December. So again, so this holds Saturn retrogrades hold back bills to be paid. Jupiter retrograde makes us a little bit more optimistic about the future, but the Saturn retrograde makes us say, oops, what if I can't get whatever I want for a price I can afford? I better not spend it right now. So that's a bit difficult. That's one of the conundrums we're in. And like I said, this isn't just happening in the United States. This is happening pretty much all over the world, in different parts of the world. Like India is really getting hit very heavily by the COVID variant D, and so we'll have to keep a look on those countries. But like I said, an angry summer, a frustrating summer, a summer in which not a lot of governmental progress will be made, or at least it'll be incremental. And I think especially when Sun enters Cancer around July, it'll fire up that Mars, and there'll be, I mean, there's violence right now. The crime rate is very high right now, but you'll see, I would say, inner city violence, and not just in the United States. I would say pretty much everywhere. Now, in terms of earthquakes, it's more of a panic issue than like real projections. Although August, I'm going to watch. I believe be watching out very, very carefully for earthquakes and for weather disasters, just because of uh, the last eclipses, the last significant eclipses of the year. And again, as you probably know, I don't use Pluto, Mars, and Neptune. I think they're fine planets. I think they work within, I think they work if you use them in Vedic astrology. I just don't, I just find them redundant to Rahu and Ketu. That's the only reason I don't use them. So if I can use, so you can see all the spaces that are occupied on this chart. We have a lot to work with without introducing the outer planets. This is not a data sparse field. Okay, so so I think that Rahu does a good job of emulating Uranus and Neptune, and Ketu does a good job of emulating Neptune and Pluto. Okay, so let's go over here. And I'd like to plug Lolita, the discussions Lolita, and I've been having. Lolita's a charming person. She's very knowledgeable astrologer. She's trained with the best people in the field. And I'm honored that she reached out to me for some information. And I suggested that we do the show as a regular thing. So again, if you like what we're doing here, or if you like what we're doing with what Lolita, Donatella Roebuck, and I are doing, please like, subscribe, and share with people who you think might be interested. And again, is Lolita and I both believe that there's nothing in the charts that can't be, or there's most things in the charts they pretty much everything can be remediated. There are some deep karmas that you can't go back and change the past. If you experience something and that's already happened, then you've experienced it. You can't go back and change the past. There are some deep issues in a chart which you might have extreme difficulty or require extreme planning to change, but there's nothing in a chart which can't be remediated. And that's that's a core concept in Indian astrology. That is, you not only have to experience this karma, but there are many paths through which you can experience karma in life. They don't all have to be catastrophic or evil. And there are many, many more books written on remedies for problems in a chart than are even written on procedures in a chart. And there's a lot of knowledge from the pundits and the priests in India, which I'll be sharing with you over the next few months, and that will help you remediate difficulties in your chart. But you do need an astrologer to guide you, just so you don't throw things more out of balance through the remediations, because you can. So let me just go here. There are some which pretty much anybody can do. They're going to be relatively harmless. But others, you really do need to talk to an astrologer. It's not really something you can. It's like you don't say to yourself, well, I have this illness and I'm going to self-prescribe. You need to go and see a doctor, or you need to see a holistic practitioner who can tell you whether or not this technique is actually safe for you to use. So just keep that in mind when you're looking through it. And there are a lot of remedies. You can look at remedies online, but again, like I said, I wouldn't take them. Especially not without talking with an astrologer. Now let's look at the astro mapping chart, which we do every week. and let's see where our potential good things are and our problems are. Okay, so the first thing I'm noticing is that we have a Rahu line going through roughly Michigan and south through Indiana and all the way down to Louisiana in the United States, all the way through Central America. And so this in some ways is going to have something to do with the immigration issues that are arising in the southern United States. There is a moon and Mars, a moon line over by in California and a Mars line close by. Now, Mars lines don't necessarily mean earthquakes. They can mean other things, but this is what I would call a prone area, an area which is prone to earthquakes. And so this entire region is going to have some problems, but it may be more prone to violence or violent attacks. And there'll be a lot of loss of property, it looks like, on the West Coast, especially California. But again, it's a little bit offshore, so it may not hit. Let's hope it won't. Let's hope it won't hit, and let's hope that people stay safe. The Rahu line causes a certain amount of panic and a certain amount of what I would call armed rebellion, and so this will be, you'll see, like populist uprisings, and the Mercury line will be over-reporting it or exaggerating it. But that's what their commercial interests are, basically. The other thing is, so again, like I said, the sooner you can view media as a business, the better off you'll be. And so it doesn't mean you should ignore them. It just means you should try to look at it through that lens. There's a nice Jupiter line going through Texas, but I think since Jupiter's retrograde, and it looks like it's going through Austin, they have my geography correct, and basically there'll be some more efforts to try to redouble and get some more vaccinations through, especially in these states right here. This is Montana down through Colorado, Wyoming, and New Mexico, it looks like on the chart. There's a sun line. There's not a lot of, there's some controversy in Washington right now, but again, it's media stoked. So essentially what they do is they hang on every word that any senator or any congressman says, and just look at the implications for what that means, when sometimes it may not have an implication at all. But the Sun Mercury combination, but things are so fraught in government right now that almost anything can be blown out of proportion if you want to. But there's a sun line between the sun, there's a Sun Mercury line, so most of the damage over here will be caused through negotiations and through reporting. That's what I'm seeing. So we have like this large part of the country, which will be, and Florida will be reported on negatively as well. Just to give a heads up. So will Cuba, so certain parts of Central America, but there is one good thing that's happening, and that is there's a sun line heading through Brazil, South America. You may see some improvement in health there. You may see some improvement, not in taxes, but at least in health. And Venus is also running through the tip of Brazil. Mars is running through the Azores, so they may have some bad weather there. They may have some governmental issues. And you see a Mars line and a Saturn line and a Moon line running close to Iceland. So I don't think they're out of the woods yet in terms of their climatic problems. There's a Rahu line running through England and Spain, so you may see an increase in COVID cases in that part of the world. I would say more of a panic. And over here you have Rahu line running through Eastern Europe and a Mercury line running through Bulgaria and Greece, but not affecting Turkey. So what does that mean in terms of the world? Well, basically we have some problems coming from Russia, from Eastern Europe, and also some problems coming to Greece. So you may see a little bit of a panic connected with Greece. Now, Turkey isn't, this is an entire region of Turkey over here is an earthquake zone. So I do pay a lot of attention to that just because of the potential for earthquakes there. But I don't think we're going to see anything really damaging. I actually did accurately predict a minor earthquake in Turkey in my last broadcast, but again, as I think I said in the broadcast, it was really not much of, there was no damage, no people were injured. It was a panic more so than a genuine earthquake. And so the Mars lines aren't close enough to Rahu. There's some potential for dangerous weather down here in the South Atlantic, and like I said, in the Azores, but not a lot. It looks like it's pretty isolated. The sun is moving through Arabia, Syria, so you'll see increasingly government control in those parts of the world. And let's go over here. We have Venus and Mars and Saturn afflicting India, sadly. So again, that crisis is going to get worse before it gets better. You'll see a kind of a decline in the Indian health issues until around, I would say, August. Then you'll start to see them get control of the situation, but it'll take them a few months to really get control of the situation. So it's really going to be difficult for them. Venus is running through Pakistan too, so there'll probably be some concerns about it. So there'll probably be increasing vaccinations in Pakistan. Venus is connected with vaccinations, actually. For those of you who don't know, it's connected with conventional medicine, because most conventional medicine is built around pure substances. Holistic medicine is built around an integration of natural substances, so it's more Jupiterian. But essentially, Venus is both more and less effective as a doctor than Jupiter. It's more effective in the cure is more defined. You have an actual chemical basis for the cure. And Jupiter is more like, well, these are traditionally the plants and the herbs we've been told work. And then retrospectively, scientists go back and say, oh, they do work. But Venus is usually called in to pull us back to life. That's one of Venus's main functions as a planet. It's been reborn itself several times in the stories connected around Venus, and allegedly the incarnation of Venus through Vishnu is still alive on this planet, walking around. So Parashurama is the incarnation of Vishnu through Venus. And so it's connected, it's really considered to be a life-giving planet, but it's much more connected with what are called allopathic cures, are essentially science-based cures or industrial cures. And Jupiter's more connected with homeopathic or natural cures. So the Venus cures will be harsher. They'll have more risks entailed them, but they'll also be initially more effective. The homeopathic is essentially a lifestyle change, and also some of the homeopathic medicines are powerful, but they're not as statistically reliable as Venus cures. All right, so no offense to any homeopaths out there. It's just, it's just the way it is. The moon is passing through China, so they're going to be really focused on commerce this month. Excuse me. And trying to expand very, very rapidly, maybe over expanding a bit. And we have a sun line, so we're going to see more government control. Taiwan is increasingly coming under pressure. These governments down here, like the Philippines and New Guinea and Indonesia, again, are going to see increasing government pressure, even Australia. And there'll be minor outbreaks of COVID towards the east coast of Australia, but New Zealand looks pretty safe. All right, so let's go back to the chart for this month and let's look at the planets and the signs. We have about 15 minutes to do that. I hope I didn't ramble too much. I'm just trying to fit everything in here. And again, if you like what we're doing here, please subscribe. Please share it with your friends. Please give me feedback. I'd appreciate it. So let's get out of the screen. So, and this will be a, whoops. Sorry about that, folks. Right. See my lovely face again. Get back online again. And I'm just going to use a chart. I'm not going to adjust it for the East Coast, just to get us back fast. All right, so these are the planetary trends for the week. So for Aries will have a lot of energy, a lot of get up and go to get back on track. Let me see what I'm sharing the screen. Hold on a second. I'm not sharing the screen. All right, so let's do that. And career life, again, will be really good, although it may find it has to reconfigure some work or redo some work. Also, the sign will be very popular this month. A lot of ambition, some fights at home, though, and some, again, arguments with relationship partners. The Taurus has Rahu and Mercury in the first house, so again, they'll feel a little bit frustrated relationship-wise. That's kind of the standard for them. They probably won't see good relationship opportunities come for about 4 months or so. But also emotionally, they're more willing to take chances. They're more willing to date, more willing to go out. They've been a little bit frightened over the past year. And so you'll see them being willing to just getting tired of staying home. Ambition, very strong ambition for relationship life. And also from the chart, Jupiter's in the 10th house, so good work opportunities and good luck, but they'll have to work awfully hard. For Gemini Sun, a little bit angry at the world, a little bit loving and angry at the same time. And at least from the chart, they'll have to watch out for stomach disorders. They'll have some relationship luck, so it'll be like a return of a relationship partner. However, it'll last for maybe about 4 months, and then it'll kind of dissipate again. And at least, or maybe even less time than that, maybe even go away around August when Jupiter enters Capricorn. But it'll open them up to new relationship opportunities probably in November. And overall, not a bad career indicator for the sign. This sign will be considered very, very attractive, very, very passionate, and they'll attract a lot of attention. Mars and Venus are in the first house for Capricorn, for Cancer rising, or for Cancer suns, and they'll attract a lot of relationship attention. They'll have a lot of charisma, a lot of people paying attention to them. K2's in the fifth house, some problems with children arise again, although they won't be that bad. Mercury, finally, work life starts to move forward as it should, and finances will tend to improve over the next few months. For Leo, Leo has the sun in the 11th house, so it's good for financial gains and good for triumph over adversity. It's a little bit difficult to have Mars, which is an important planet for this chart, debilitated and in the 12th house. So jobs will be sporadic, or job offers will be sporadic. Work opportunities will be sporadic for this sign, but relationship life will actually be improved. And they'll have more relationship opportunities. But again, that'll dampen out a little bit and make people a little bit less consistent in their relationship interests. And the fourth house indicates some feeling of insecurity in the world and some career frustration, which will continue really until around March of 2022. For Virgo, Virgo has the Lord of the seventh is in the sixth house, so that means relationship partners will become enemies or adversaries. That'll change after August, but it's there right now. And also Saturn's aspect in the seventh house, so they'll be kind of stuck where they are relationship wise. Mars is in the 11th house, so that's good for gain. Venus is in the 11th house, good for gain. Mostly they'll be focused on education and career though this month, so that'll be their main emphasis. Libra has a couple of planets in the 10th house and one planet in the 9th house, so we'll get along very well work-wise. They'll probably have some difficult arguments or some difficult to please relationship partners, and there'll be some lack of ability to hold on to money with K2 in the second house. Jupiter in the fifth, though, good for love affairs, good for romantic involvements. These aren't long-term romantic involvements, but they're still good. And for the K2 is still in Scorpio. Rahu and Mercury are in the seventh house. It's sort of a time for experiencing relationships, but not committing to people. Not really until March of next year. And this chart will have some work problems or feel like they're being ignored at work. Although the Lord of the first is in the ninth, so they'll get along well with their bosses and supervisors. K2, Jupiter's in the seventh house. Again, a lot of emphasis on education and home life. The sign Sagittarius has Saturn in the second house, as it has for a long time, but the moon is there, and that'll give unexpected financial gains from relationship partners or from government. Jupiter's in the third house, and it'll make this planet very ambitious, but politely so. And Rahu and Mercury are in the sixth house, so they may have some stomach disorders or some stomach problems, so they'll have to be careful about that. Sun is in the seventh house. Relationship life will be very intense, and Mars and Venus, the sign, will seem very sexy, very intriguing to other people. For Aquarius, you have Jupiter in Aquarius, right? Or Capricorn. I skipped over Capricorn. Moon and Saturn are in Capricorn and aspected by Mars, so that'll make relationship life seem to be very difficult to pull together. And what I mean by that is there'll be this feeling that that it's not the right time to pull together or the right time to be engaged with people, but there'll be a lot of interest in engaging. And I would say it'll form kind of awkward relationship pattern. So people will jump into relationships and jump out again. That's just sort of the pattern that shows here. and they'll try to keep relationship partners at a distance. Ch Childhood and luck-wise, it'll be good luck, but it'll be transient, so grab the luck while you can. Sixth house, confidence problems. And K2 in the 11th, friends can't be trusted for the sign. Now, Aquarius has Jupiter in the first house. It indicates love affairs will blossom into long-term relationships for this sign, but it'll take a while to do that. That really won't happen until the end of the year, no matter how impatient the sign gets. And also, there'll be a lot of impatience for financial growth on the part of the sign. Rahu and Mercury are in the fourth house, so there'll be some dissatisfaction about home life. Sun is in the fifth house, good for love affairs, romantic involvements. Mars and Venus are in the sixth house, good for exercise, good for focusing on beauty. And K2's in the 10th house, which again, not real recognition in career life. Pisces is the last time we're going to look at. Pisces Lord is in the 12th house, so it'll feel a little bit confined or like it doesn't have control over its life. And the other thing to say about Pisces is communication will be exaggerated this month. It'll be very excited about things and very, but it should watch out for relationship partners, at least for another week or so. It shouldn't really believe everything relationship partners tell it. And Sun is in the fourth house. So again, it doesn't mean that you won't get involved in a relationship. You probably will, but just in terms of making a commitment, just hold off for at least about a week. Sun is in the fourth house, a lot of emphasis on home life again. And K2 and Venus and Mars are in the fifth house. So again, ample opportunities for love affairs or romantic involvements. And K2's in the ninth house. That's really a good combination for luck, but it'll come from obscure places or it'll come from unexpected places. So that's it for this week. I am going to try to slowly change around the format of these. And I'll also try to make shorter posts during the week. And as I said, for a variety of personal reasons, I've had difficulties making posts. Those seem to be lifting a little bit, so I should be able to make more frequent posts. And thanks for your patience and your devotion to the channel. I really love and respect all of you. I thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week, maybe earlier. Namaste. And don't forget to watch the Louis and Gary broadcasts. I think you'll find them really interesting because you'll get two experiences from astrologers who've been doing this for quite a while. Okay? All right. Bye-bye, everyone. Namaste again. See you next week.